Good afternoon and welcome to all of you joining us from different parts of the country and the world today. It's a very important discussion that we're going to have, and I'm extremely privileged to have not just an author of a book, but also a great friend today to be introduced to all of you. So while you can see him smiling on your screen, let me first take the privilege of introducing Jitendra. So Jitendra Solanki, his full name, he is first and foremost one of the earliest people in our industry in India to speak in our profession, to speak about issues relating to financial planning for special for families with special needs, with children who have issues, children who have difficulties, children who probably need a lot more attention than we usually think of when we deal with day-to-day matters. He has put a lot of focus on that subject. But that aside, that is his passion. That is also his profession. But Jitu has also been, and I call him by that name because we are friends too, been an expert in this area, talking about it for over 15 years. I must also mention that part of this inspiration, or probably part of this force, is with Shweta Solanki as well. She is a disability expert who is working in this field. And, I am amazed at the extent of focus that Jitendra has brought in on this particular area in our country. Along with that, I must also mention that his practice is one which is a fee-only financial planning practice. In other words, for the layman, all that a practitioner like Jitendra expects from clients is fees and nothing else. So that is an extremely high level of fiduciary in the conduct of oneself as a professional in this area. So he's a postgraduate from IIT Roorkee, and he's also obviously, a certified financial planner. So as a certified financial planning professional, he is also. We are glad to be telling everybody he's one amongst us in our profession. I'm so happy to have you, Jitendra. Welcome to today's discussion. It's an important one.
Thank you, Rajesh.
So it's always great, Jitendra, to start off with the purpose, with the motivation that got you here. So let me just leave it there and allow you to take the center stage.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for such a nice introduction. Okay, so when I started my practice, like all, I also started a general practitioner, and looking, that was the initial days, when you want to grab more and more clients. So going towards those clients and engaging with them. But I think there was always a thought in mind, and surely it comes from my better half, Shweta Solanki, because she has been a disability expert working in the field for last 15 to 20 years. And when I started my practice, so by the time I have already met quite a few families, who have, and in and around our families also, we have children with families who got children with disability. So I was aware about the challenges they are facing. Okay, what was not there for understanding of those challenges, what challenges they are, and what do you mean by them, and how the life is looked by them as a family who has got a special need child to care. So I think that understanding was there. So there was always a thought in my mind ki at any point of time in my life, I'm going to start a practice for them. because when I met, families, and I myself looked around how they are planning and how they are getting advice, and so the result was that in India, we hardly had any planner or advisor who has got an expertise in this area. So one aspect is surely the kind of awareness you need, the kind of knowledge you need when you want to plan for these families. But yes, what you need is an understanding, and I think that understanding came from the resource I had, meeting those families and working with these families. But then, so I started in 2013, I would say. I started as a SEBI RIA. Before that, I already started a practice. Now when and so I and the way I began was that I wrote a first article on financial planning for families in Mint. Okay, that was my beginning, even before the book has written. And I tell you that what are the challenges his family face. The first client who came to me, now in the first meeting, he told me that that article was in front of me for 3 months, and I was thinking whether to contact you or not, because I am a father of a child with disability, and it's very hard to open up. Okay, that's the kind of challenges they have. Finally, he became my first client, and he's there till with us today. So I started my practice, and slowly and slowly gathered those information, uh, plus build up like my expertise itself, reading, understanding. I met so many families, not with an idea of engaging them within clients, but making myself to understand more about their life. And as I said, the resource, my better half, was always there to help me out to understand their life. But the question was that how to reach these families. Okay, because you can start as a financial planner, but the kind of challenges they face, the kind of environment we are in India, especially when you are the first one in this into this segment. I think that's where I thought of writing a book. When that's where the idea of book came in. But this practice was always there. The motivation came in that I wanted to serve a segment where there nobody has entered into. Okay, nobody has thought of serving those. And there was already people in our fraternity who have entered into some kind of a niche, like Sanjeev Govilaji is there, who is with defense. But these families, and because these families were not getting an advice on any aspect, so it was left to them to find out a way for their child future. Now that was very disheartening. I think that's what motivated me to start as a practice. And plus because I was able to build a team. Now that team actually helped me out in starting my venture. Otherwise it is always difficult for a planner when you do not have an understanding or you do not have a resource. I think being having that resource, that's what motivated me to start this practice.
But Jitendra, I wouldn't leave you there. I have to applaud you a little more. It is very unusual for a person who has completed engineering from IIT to get into a conversation around financial planning. So there should be something more to it, right?
Okay, first of all, I have not done my engineering. So I am a postgraduate. So I have done my MBA from IIT Roorkee. So I'm a management, graduate, pass out from IIT Roorkee. See, financial planning. I've been into financial service industry for 15 years. I've been working throughout with companies. I worked with banks and most of the distribution houses. But then there was always a zeal to do something of your own. Okay, because at one point of time you feel it's time that you start your own. And by the time I started my practice, certified financial planning has already entered into India. Okay, so that was where I started my own practice. But to start practice into this niche segment, see, there are always challenges we have still today. So I knew very well that the challenges we are going to face with respect to making these families aware of that they need financial planning and how should they go about. But more than that, I think for me it was always that my idea was not to just end up being a general practitioner. Okay, that idea was always not there when I started my practice. I don't want to be a general practitioner, so I am always going to enter into a niche segment, a segment which I can serve with wholeheartedly. And this segment of special children families, these families, it came very near to my heart, to start a practice for them, because I have seen them closely. I have seen them watching, and through the resource I had watched them really really very very close. As I said, within our families also we had families with special children. I have seen them struggle, so it's like there was always that I wanted to get make them out from this struggle and help them to at least start planning for their child future, at least have something. Because it was always haywire going for these families, and nobody is getting any kind of a good advice. I won't say see, advisory on financial services were all there, but with respect to special child care there was no advice which was being delivered to them, and that's where the families were facing a challenge. I think as I said, 2013 I started my practice. Mid of 2013, it was just like that now it's time that I'm going to wholeheartedly work for families with special children, and that's where I entered into this segment.
So let me use the opportunity to connect my error in assumption with the error in assumptions that we generally make on disability. As much as I mentioned that IIT Roorkee equal to engineering, disability equal to wheelchair is something that I have often heard you say. Would you like to throw some light on how public perceives disability?
See, whenever we see a disabled person, it's a general perception. Because I have traveled a lot of traveling I have done in buses. Okay, so whenever you see a disabled, the perception always go with that the disability comes a lot of what you call that this person is not capable of what we are. I think that's the perception people are making of disability, that anybody who is a disabled is a person not capable of what we are. We need to get out of that perception. Disability doesn't mean that the person is not capable. Disability means the person is capable of something else, probably which you are not capable of. Okay, they would have special abilities which you would not have. Apart from that, they would lead a normal life which which you will live. It's just that they need a support. But I think they all of people who have got a disability have some ability where they work. In fact, when you see a disabled person in a wheelchair, right, uh, you can see, one is we hear a lot of stories, right? We hear a lot of stories today. Paralympics is also being done, and we hear a lot of people who are disabled and who have achieved higher in their career, professional or personally. But when you talk with any person with disability, I'm talking of more on people who are maybe physically disabled. Okay, and as I said, you will find a lot of disability. One, now disability also have two perception. One, there is a disability by birth. Second, there is a disability by your profession also. Army men, right? Army men who has fought war, they also called disabled, right? Because of the reasons, right? So it's the perception of people who are disabled by birth. I'm naming as disabled, but disabled by birth, where we have made a perception because we do not understand those disabilities. We can see physical disability, we can understand, we can make a conversation with them because they are only physical disabled. But people who are mentally disabled, right, we actually we have a wall around us. We do not want to make a conversation with them, because there is a perception which is being built, is that they are not capable of what we are capable of. I think that's the perception what society has, and that's the challenges we have to remove. So disability means that the person has got some special abilities. Sometimes those abilities might not be you would have, but I think we have to remove that perception that a disabled means that he is not capable of. A disabled very well means he is very very capable of, and capable of maybe something else.
I mean, this is really revealing, Jitendra, because what you're mentioning is hitting it right at the, right on the head. I would say the nail is being hit right on the head, because there is the what I could carry back is there is the spirit of understanding what disability is and what a person with disability needs. And there is also the letter of the law which defines what is disability, or there are certain provisions of law in India which talk about disability. Would you like to just touch upon a few of them? Because I would have some related questions as well.
Okay, so there is a person with PWD Act, which is there. It was made initially in 2005. Now under that there were 7 disabilities which were identified. Okay, now in those 7 disabilities, if I have to name, so 1 second. So you will have blindness, low vision, mental illness, cerebral palsy. Government revised this disability bill, and in 2016, and now you have 21 different disabilities which are defined. Now, in general, if you talk about, we just look at 1 or 2 disabilities and we make a perception, but there are 21 disabilities defined under PWD Act now. Okay, and in the disability bill 2016. Now, for example, somebody who has got a thalassemia. Okay, I'm just giving an example.
Yes.
He was not considered disabled before, but he has thalassemia is also added as a disability now. Now, what does it mean? Now, in the law, a disability, a person with disability has got a certain benefits allowed. Okay, in India there is a benchmark disability. Under above that he is considered a disabled. So 40% is the benchmark disability. Below 40% a person is not considered disabled. So whenever you see a person disability certificate, it will mention the percentage of disability. So it's 40% to 100%. So 40 to 80% is a disability. Beyond 80% is a severe disability. You name it in India. Okay, so there were certain disabilities like people who have got suffered from the acid attack victims. They were not added. Now they are considered under this disability bill. Okay, so we have 21 disabilities now which are defined under the disability bill, and disabilities with vision, blindness is there, low vision is there, then intellectual disability is there. As I said, thalassemia is added as a disability today. And if you have to name other disability, Parkinson some disease is there, uh, autism spectrum disorder, speech and language disability. So disability is not 1 or 2 disabilities where you can make a where you will define your borders under disability that only these person are disabled. But let's also understand, when your government is defining this disability, they are defining it because these person can avail certain benefits which are which are there from the government, apart from other aspect of life. But as a general people, I think, and it is, and the information is available today, so we also have to know that these are defined under disability bill, and these are considered as disability in India now.
But Jitendra, how about the guardian? There are provisions there as well, right, for our children. So what about that?
Okay, So first, let's understand, why do you require a guardian? Why a person with disability require a guardian? See, in India, under the law, parents are natural guardian till the child is 18 years of age. Okay. So we are a natural guardian of our children till they are minor. Right. Once a child turns into an adult, 18 years of age, under the law, does not need a guardian. He can make his own decisions. Right. But what happens is that if somebody requires a support of some other person making a decision on their behalf, then you can take a guardianship of that individual. So suppose you are a parent. Now, even after once the child turns 18, then you are not considered a guardian of your child anymore, because he is not a child, he is an adult. But because he requires a support in decision making, he might be able to live independently, on a personal affairs. But as far as money making decision or decision about his life, he needs your support. So for you to continue making decision on his behalf, you have to seek a legal guardianship. Once you are appointed a legal guardian, then you can make a decision on your child behalf. So even for parents of special children, once the child turns 18, they will have to take a guardianship, and they can appoint a guardian for their child or for their adult child after their lifetime through the will. So in the will, they can appoint a guardian that who is going to continue making decisions for their child once they are not there.
That's a very important and foundational thing that everybody has to do, right? Which means that by default, would you therefore guide every family who has got unfortunately, who would have a child who is with disability, to make sure that they go and do this?
Yes, certainly, because what happens is that if you do not appoint a guardian, then law appoint a guardian. Okay, because he needs a guardian, he needs a support to continue making decisions, financials or even for personal affairs. For example, where he is going to live, the residential facilities. So for that decision, if you as a parent, you are not making that decision, then the matter can go to the court, where the court decide that who is going to be the guardian. Okay, now in India, going to a court, you also understand, these are lengthy procedures, not a 1 day, 1 month, or a phase. So you do not want that to happen after your lifetime, leaving your child on mercy of, court to decide, and the court will take their own, time. So I think it's important that every family has to write a will naming the next guardian after their lifetime, because if you have named it in your will, that person takes the legal guardianship of your child. So it's a very valid legal document of guardianship.
So which means that's a very important checklist. Even if you are not doing anything particularly on financial planning, that's an important checklist, an extremely important checklist item for every such family. And that is possible online as well today, right?
Will, so you can make it online also. So there are process, but what happens is that you have to understand the legalities of
Yes.
making a guardian, because what happens if nuclear families specifically do not have immediate family members. Now suppose parents have only a single child, and we have those families where the child is a special child. Now you have to identify some family member or a friend. Okay, so you need a professional expertise to know what the law says as far as appointing somebody beyond the family. So there is a legal provisions with respect to who can be the legal guardian of your child, whether within family member or outside family member, or if your family members are abroad, can they take a legal guardianship or not? So I think when you are appointing a legal guardian, it's important that you always seek a professional help, because you will need a legal help to understand the provisions around it.
Very important, Jitendra. I completely agree. At the same time, I have also noticed that we do have the guardianship act, the regulation that talks about it. And under that, there is the national trust that has been created. So do you also therefore go and register there at the national trust, or
Okay.
how does it work?
Okay, so what happens is now, for every parent of a special child, it will be a huge burden on court if every parent start going to court, with such a large numbers. So what government did is they created a National Trust Act, where they created national trust, and national trust were given, the powers to appoint legal guardian, to complete that process of legal guardianship, specifically in case of four disabilities: autism, cerebral palsy, mental retardation, Down syndrome. So with these parents who have got, these four children with four disabilities, so what national trust does is national trust appoint local level committees in every state. Now these LLCs are mostly the NGOs now, and national trust has got an online application. So once your child turns 18, you fill up the and it is mainly for the parents to take a legal guardianship. See, for after you can appoint it through a will. Now that will can be notified, to the national trust. It's a very valid legal document. But for a parent to take a legal guardianship when they are alive, there are two options: either you go through the court or you go through the national trust. So you fill up an online application on national trust. That application goes to the local level committee which is in your state. They will process it. They will call you for a session where they will assess it. So there will be a team of lawyers, social workers, doctors who will assess, and after that you will be appointed as a legal guardian and given the legal guardianship certificate. So I think this national trust was mainly created, one of the main objective was to avoid people going to the court to seek that legal guardianship, and they can, instead of going to the court filing a petition and taking up the guardianship, they can go to the national trust, and this is without any cost. They don't have to bear any cost for seeking this legal guardianship.
That is substantial amount of information, Jitendra. I just had one point there, because when I was listening to you, autism, cerebral palsy, mental retardation, and other multiple disabilities as they have defined. These are the four categories for the National Trust. But you also mentioned earlier that, now the government recognizes probably 17 more.
Yes.
So, which means there is a gap, right? Even from a legislation point of view, there is a gap where this can be taken up for conversations. You see that too?
Yes, it is, because national trust generally deals with these four kind of disabilities. Apart from these four kind, if you have a disability and if you want a legal guardianship, you have to generally go to the SDM office, to apply. See, the process is going to be the same. It's just that national trust process makes it easier for you, not going to the court and to those hearings. So wherever there's no LLC, then but you have to route it to a district magistrate office to take up the guardianship. Okay, so if people who have got other disabilities, they have to route their application through them.
Understand. So if I were to summarize these two key points, because we did have a few questions pop up on the will as well. The suggestion coming around the will you had made in the context that whether your child is below 18 or above 18, the will is to be made the moment you know you have the right of it. That is what is the guidance.
Yes.
And as far as the national trust goes, that is not connected to the will. Will can also be given to the national trust, but national trust is also a place where when you are alive. So will talks about when you are not alive, what will happen. And national trust is also for me as a parent to go and say, okay, my son or my daughter, he or she is disabled, and I would like to continue to be the legal guardian for her or him.
Yes.
Irrespective of him.
So national trust is the organization where you, when you are alive, you seek the legal guardianship. Okay, through will you appoint somebody else to take up the legal guardianship. Now, only thing is happen that if you have appointed through a will, now that person can notify national trust that through will he has been appointed. So he does not have to go through the national trust complete process. Okay,
sure.
But national trust is specifically when you are alive and once the child turns 18, you want to take up the legal guardianship for your child.
Understand. So now let me come to the financial planning aspect, because we've tried to understand a bit around how do you look at disability. You try to share with us what are the legal provisions of defining disability. You've also shared, that perceptions around disability is not the way. We need to change our perceptions. And very clearly, that's
Yes.
a point that you have noted. And we did touch upon wills, and we also spoke about the National Trust. So this is a good half an hour synopsis since the time we started our conversation. Now let's get to the others, the second phase of this, more to do with the planning, the practice.
Yes.
I think in general, while I have spoken to our financial planning professionals, there is very clearly a difference in how you would be the very fact that the moment you start talking about matters where a family has got a person with disability, whether a child or a major, it is not an easy conversation. They are also, I would say, even as a family, they would be so-called in a vulnerable state because they already have emotional issues revolving around how to handle these matters and how to even converse about these matters with you. So, right from the first stage of financial planning, where you establish the client relationship, I think that is so sacrosanct in such a conversation. Could you share what are the unique things that you have experienced when you have tried to establish relationships?
Okay. See, there is a difference between a traditional planning and planning for a family with special need. And one of the biggest difference, there are differences with respect to the financial areas, legal aspects and other. One of the important aspect which is differentiate is the emotional aspect, the psychological aspect. The psychological aspect is what differentiate a financial planning between a traditional planning and a family with special needs. Because for a family who have got a child, with special needs, social gathering, living environment, our society, the child, residential care beyond their lifetime, these are the most important consideration. And I mean, whenever we start discussing a family with a family about a special child, the discussion starts with these areas. It does not start how much money I should leave behind for the child. The discussion starts that where my child is going to live after me. Where he's going to live. I don't have a residential, place, for my child. How he's going to deal with social issues. Who are the family members who can support. So all discussions which we have done and which I do with special children families, they start with these areas. It takes a lot of time to deal with these issues because these are not one day or a fact about a residential living for a child you cannot answer is these are areas where requires a lot of planning and support from other aspects. So this psychological issue is where the planning for special children starts. Okay, financial numbers, talking about legal aspects come later. First, these psychological issues. Now, how we did it, initial clients, surely it was a learning for us, to understand what they are questioning to us, to understand what they want to discuss. I think after a few clients, we understood, and plus, talking to other families, we very well understood that, where they are going to start the conversation. And that's where we built up our own life plan system. Now, what we did is we created certain questionnaires, like the first questionnaire we sent to a parent is a questionnaire of online to understand that how much they are currently prepared, what they have done in their life up till now. Okay, then only we go to the next section where we talk about these psychological issues. Because whenever we want to engage with a family with special child, one thing is for sure, and one thing we always keep in mind, that in the next one or two discussions, all discussion would happen on these psychological issues. Okay, so we built up, questionnaires to understand, and these questionnaires are not, multiple answers. These are subjective questionnaires. Believe me, parents write these answers. Now, what are the questionnaires? I just give you an example. How much do you understand about your child disability? How much you know about your child life expectation? Okay, you describe your disability in your own words. These questionnaires are for us to understand what kind of a psychological stress parent is going through. Okay, and whether they have understood the disability well. Now, what is the next step? I haven't even gone to the, talking about the financial numbers. What is the next step? If they do not understand disability, we bring in the counselor for them first. Let them understand the disability first. Then we move to the financial planning part, because financial planning they will understand only when they know what is their child life stages. Okay, in my book, if you see, I have prepared the child life stages. Now that is the basic crux of all our planning, that these life stages parents have to understand, and we try to gather information that how much they understand of this. If not, we help them. If yes, then we discuss more areas. So I think in a traditional planning and planning for families, the financial issues will be more, because you are planning for two generations. See, the biggest difference is, in a traditional planning, once my children settle down, it's only me and my spouse, my retirement. But when a family have a special child, it's about two generations. I have to plan for my lifetime, and I have to plan for my child lifetime, which is beyond mine. Okay, so it's planning for two generation, which is the major difference between traditional planning. And I think in both these planning, the psychological issues is what is there in special needs planning, which you have to address.
This is so insightful, Jitendra. So uh, that brings us to the other point that, like you said, you are encouraging the parents to define disability as in their own words. And it's not an easy conversation, right? I mean, uh, because post that, then what you just mentioned was there's somebody to accompany you. And I know that who accompanies you is already well aware. We are all aware of that. But which also means that as a practicing financial planner in this area, even before you think of looking at this area, you need to first understand what is the resource that you need to put yourself tagging along with, or the team that you need to have with you before you can even go and have a conversation with clients, right?
Yes,
That's something that I take away, because that is also different from how traditional financial planning practices can be put together.
yes, rightly said, Rajesh. Because for me to start planning for special child, I need to understand his life stages. Okay, without me understanding his life stages, I cannot plan for him. Okay, now that's the crux of all. When you want to do a financial planning, you need to understand, and you need to understand those issues. What are the issues which surround these families, and solution to them would come in if you can build a team of experts. Now those team of experts are not just lawyers or social workers. The team of expert you need who share the same vision of what you have. Okay, I don't need a legal professional who can just sign a who can just prepare a legal document. I need a legal professional who can think for the next 20 years and bring me to the issues with respect to disabilities which can come forward. Okay, now you do not find people in the legal fraternity also. You do not find people experts, so much experts into person with disabilities act, or people with disabilities, because it's not about preparing them now. It's about, if they face any challenges, do you have a resource to make them come out from that challenge? And that challenge can be anything. Now, does your team think from that perspective? Fortunately, I was able to create the team. Even the legal professional which we have tied up, he shares a very good vision with us. And believe me, the firm which we created, for helping out in the legal aspect, is because our legal professional also share the same vision. They also want to, help out special children families. So unless and until you have these professionals sharing the vision along with you, it is very difficult, to practice as a special need planner. So you need people around, and whether it's a, because there is always, element of social angle which is involved. And
Yes.
when you want to, say some family is into some kind of a challenge, there is not always a financial consideration there. Okay, it might be, because of social aspect. And yes, I also do get, I am associated with so many organizations, and they look from that perspective also, because you are not going to, when you are into this segment, it is not only going to be people who have a capacity to pay. You also will be approached by people who do not have a capacity to pay, probably the low income group. Now, do you have a vision to, help them out also? Unless and until you do not have a vision, it's very difficult, to serve special children families.
So, Jitendra, that brings us to two key points. One is, then there is a here and now aspect of the financial planning, because obviously, with all the background, the information, understanding the emotion, and we have to get to what is the obvious thing that we need to put in place. Putting in place a plan for here and now is also a plan which, like you rightly said, generational in nature. So it goes beyond the existing generation. So a couple of things that are coming up in that context, and we do have a few questions as well, was number one, so do you see a disproportionate requirement to set aside, any disproportionate money to be set aside for any events that are unique to such kind of situations? Have you seen that in your experience?
Sorry, come again. What is?
So usually in general financial planning process, when we undergo conversations with financial planners, they would say set aside 6 months as contingency, 9 months,
Yes,
12 months.
yes.
But when it comes to children with special needs, there could be certain contingencies which, like you rightly said, depending on the understanding of the disability, depending on
Yes.
the life stage of that disability, where could it
Yes.
take the child to,
Yes.
there could be certain things that are nuanced, which is not the routine 9 month, 12 month, whatever contingency plan. So is there
Yes.
something that you can throw light on? Yeah.
Yes, there are certain specific requirements or contingencies which can come up. Now, when you have a child with special needs, so just give you an example of emergency fund. It's not only emergency fund of yours; it's emergency fund of your child requirement also, which you have to create. In a normal course, we can say 4 to 6 months of emergency fund you create. But when we have a child with special needs, we actually help families to create at least 2 years emergency fund. No,
2
because
years.
there is 2 years emergency fund we are helping the families to create, because there is a special child requirement, and when you have liabilities, other aspects, then meeting those special child requirement, and those expenses are on a higher side. There are medical expenses which are on a higher side. So there is always a requirement to set aside two kind of an emergency fund. One is for your own expenses, household expenses, and one is for the only special child. So one is that there are other contingencies which can come up. For example, if you are disabled, now in general traditional planning, we are planning that if you are disabled, okay, suppose then, and if you are permanently disabled or you are incapacitated, now somebody needs an access to your finances to help you out. But
Yes.
here you need two kind of provision. One, somebody needs to access your financial to help you out, but somebody needs to take a decision for your child also. Okay,
Very
so
true.
that's the additional requirement coming on to you when you plan out the contingencies at your death. Okay, the legal aspect you have to plan. So we, in a traditional planning, we look at, you can create a will or you can create a trust if you want financial to set aside. Here you have to create a will, you are creating a trust, but you also have to decide on where your child is going to live. because you both parents are not there today. Can he live in the same residential house, or he
Yes.
needs a residential care center? So these are kind of contingencies additionally which you have to plan with respect to traditional planning.
Understand, which is also very, very nuanced. So on that, comes a related question. Is there any particular guideline on what kind of trust should you create? Are there different types of trust? Because obviously it's going to be a private trust, but then are there any other aspects to consider while creating that trust?
See, there are no specific trust provisions for special needs. In India, we do not have. Okay.
Okay.
So what private trust law in India have, you have to create a trust within that. Now, what kind of a trust you want to create, whether a revocable or whether an irrevocable, it depends on family to family situation, right? You want a trust to be created, maybe, you are middle age, you want to a trust to be created, but you want control in your hand. Then you can create a revocable trust. But you have already retired, you are at a higher age. Now you want to create a trust so that if you are not there tomorrow, the trust can continue managing provisions. So you will be creating an irrevocable trust now. So what type of trust you create is going to depend on your situation and what family wants, right? But otherwise, we do not have specific provision for special needs. We do not have it in India yet.
I see. So, Jitendra, two more things connected to it, So, I mean, even in my own first circle, friend circle, I do have families where we have children with special needs. So I can connect with a lot of things that you're speaking. There are, amongst them, in one family, they have only one child, and that one child is a child with special needs. The other family, they have two children. One is a child who is normal, and the other child is one with special needs. So when it comes to a home which has got so if it is only one child with special needs, more or less you've kind of articulated what needs to be done. But in this case where you have two children, one with special needs and one who's a normal child, what do you generally, what is the guidance that you give your clients? How do you?
Okay, so when you have a single child with special needs, so there are lot of challenges which come around, and the biggest challenge is that after parents, who's going to look after the child?
Yes.
Right, because he or she does not have a sibling, right? So there we have to understand the legal provision and see, who can be appointed a legal guardian. We look at creating a trust for him. We look at identifying a good residential care if the family wants a residential care, and there are residential care being set up, being developed by the parents community themselves. There is a lot of development going in that area. So we look at identifying a good residential care, and we try to create an ecosystem. That's what our main objective is, that we try to create an ecosystem where the trust can be the main entity, and the trust can set up contract with service providers, and with residential care, and the guardian can be the person who's overseeing all the affairs. So those kind of an ecosystem we create. Now if the child has got a sibling, surely there is an added advantage that after the parents, he can be the whole soul, he can look after the child. But then we also advise to parents that this responsibility, let the child accept it. As a parent, you should not throw this responsibility, because he has its own dreams, right? And you do not know when he enter into a professional career, whether he will be in India or abroad. You can't restrict that, because he has to take care. But yes, you have an added advantage that there is a sibling, but then we always advise families that fine, it's good the child has got a sibling, but never throw up the responsibility, just because he's a sibling so he has to take care. Understand what he wants, understand what he needs, understand his requirement, also understand his vision also. If it comes within from himself, yes, I am going to take care, I think that's the best decision you have. Otherwise we have seen a lot of families who are not planning about this, because by default, it is considered that the sibling is going to take care. That default provision shouldn't coming in. That default provision should not be there. Let the child accept it. Let the child himself take this responsibility. Then it is more, fruitful decision.
Which is also very important, because it is a bit like, we did have a few weeks ago a session on estate planning, in which, our friend Suresh from Bangalore, he was mentioning that by default, when we are born with a checkbox as per law, which is intestate.
Yes.
And you have to consciously remove that checkbox by writing a will, because
Yes.
otherwise you are intestate. So it's something similar that I'm hearing from you, because there is no choice but to make sure that you have this document.
Yeah, because a lot of parents I have, come across, so they have assumed that the child is going to take the responsibility sibling. But, we also understand, and that is when they are making a decision when the child himself is, probably 10 years of age. We do not know what is going to come up in the future. We are planning for contingencies. So for families who have got a sibling, we ask them to plan for both the situations. Okay, and be prepared for. It's good the child takes up the responsibility, within himself. If not, he's not able to, he has his own dreams of pursuing something else in the future, right? Then you have a second plan prepared for it. He would be there, he would be involved. See, you want an involvement, you do not want his dreams to be restricted, because so there are ways and means where his involvement, his managing affairs would always be there, but the legal provision might be different. So you understand those legal provision, implement those, rather than shouldering the complete responsibility.
Understand. So that brings us to two more matters, and again, I am always of a view that, financial planning is not equal to wealth. I mean, there is always again, like you said, what is the perception on disability? Similarly, the perception around the moment you speak about these two words, financial planning, it just by default means you got to be wealthy, you got to have a lot of money, then only you can do financial planning. I think it's a lot more, than just talking about wealth management. I mean, it is basically about planning money matters, and it is foundational to all families. So there could be families who are not as resourced, who may not be able to put some of these things in place. And I do not know the cost of creation or running a trust. I mean, there is some points around that, but along with that, Jitendra, the key question is: are you aware of any government initiatives, schemes? An inclusion agenda is very high, on the radar of so many organizations, including reducing inequality is one of the sustainable development goals, number 10. So, which means even the UN has put focus. India is a signatory to the SDGs, which means there is a focus by the government as well. So, are there any such schemes, any such? I mean, maybe at least what you have understood over these years that people can utilize.
See, there are certain schemes which are there by the government, like you get a concessional loans, when you have a child with disability, you can travel, with a child with disability, you have got a discount in fares when you travel. Those kind of schemes are available, which families can avail. But where the challenge is, especially for people who are in that income group, the challenge is finding those residential facilities, those provisions. They used to be there, they might be there, but I think not up to the mark we can see, and there has been issues around that we have faced in the past. So I would say the schemes are there, but they help you out, not to a great extent. At the end of the day, you have to plan out from your own resources. What is coming out today is from the community themselves. The community is building up residential areas. It might go up to the low income group also, but that is in the future. Currently, we are seeing planning for people who have a capacity to pay. But from the government side, I think the initiatives, it's still yet to come, because the disability bill itself revised in 2016, and it was prepared in 2000, a long back, right? It took a lot of time for the government to revise the disability bill 2016, and bringing some offenses related to disability, if you do. So it's a from the government, it was a good initiative, but I think it's going to take time. We see other initiative from the government, especially on the residential care centers. And it's not up to the mark, we can really depend upon.
I mean, it just, but the name of the act in itself has three other components. You have equal opportunities, you have protection of rights, you also have full participation. So these are also expectations of the law.
Yes,
that
certainly.
persons with disabilities should be given equal opportunity, should be protected, should be allowed to participate. But I mean, like you rightly said, we still have a long way to go in terms of even getting there. But and the policies may not necessarily take care of it. So I was just thinking,
see, policies, what happened, Rajesh, ki today if government is going to come out with a policy, it will take years to implement it, right? Now 2016 bill was revised. Now suddenly the government changes. You can look at, when it is going to be implemented. So it's a matter of the implementation. Government has created those provisions. Now it's matter of the fact that by when they can implement everything. Like for example, every building, government building now onwards after the disability bill is going to be disabled friendly. Every building has to get to disabled friendly. I think it's going to take years to implement that, right? So it's the implementation part where we are seeing now, that we are waiting to see that these are implemented. Provision have been created.
Understand, Jitendra. So just one last, because we have a few more minutes left, but this last point also brings us to something critical. Have you actually seen, where, because some of the issues that come up is, okay, I know I need to do this. I need to write a will, probably to protect the child. I need to create a trust. But unfortunately, I am as a family lacking in resource. And I mean, honestly, there is a question on people below poverty line, but we cannot address how to remove poverty, but we can at least address how we can connect some of these issues with how we could take it forward. I'm just generally asking, have you come across any initiatives where, suppose there are persons with disabilities, including children who are there in the neighborhood. Today, the government has allowed, or there are regulations here which allow for crowdfunding for causes. So could it be a possibility? I'm just generally asking, even for us as the financial planning fraternity, wherever we are operating in the country, because we've got safety professionals spread across the country. I mean, that is one geographical, perspective on the safety professional count. If you are connected to communities, if you are connected with the society in that way, could the communities take the initiative to say, you know what, I have these 2 or 3 or 4 families. Here is the trust that we want to create. Here is the funding for that trust. This is a document that will take care of these 1, 2, 3 students. Is that a practical way to look at it?
Rajesh, practically it might be difficult, because you are looking at creating something for say 40 years of lifetime. Okay, now the only issue here is that you can create a charitable trust, and it will be work under a charitable cause. Okay, there are projects going under charitable causes. I am also aware of a lot of projects which are going under charitable cause for these. But creating something for next 30-40 years under these charitable causes, especially for below poverty line or low income group, the funding has to be looked at, because we have seen the funding for by the government, lot of curtail on the funding aspect, especially funding coming from abroad. So there are a lot of challenges there. I won't say it is impossible. It might be possible, but a lot of challenges are there. You do not know what regulation come out after may say 10 years. then what happens? So you have to be prepared for that. I have not seen, project going in that area where, only for these, families, there is a project by somebody, creating a residential care for which can take care of next 40 years. It's a very long, vision. But as I say, it's not practically impossible, but then we'll have to see, what challenges is going to come across.
I know we are sharp on time, but probably I'll steal a few more minutes of your valuable time.
Yeah.
To just pick up on another question. That is, we all talk about, and with the pandemic in front of us, which we have been seeing as well. Obviously, there has been, and there are families where suddenly lost both parents, and unfortunately, like we all see, 99 point whatever percent of people do not write a will. So then the children are left in the lurch.
Yes.
That is happening. And particularly, like you said, if you have a child with disabilities and you don't have, you haven't taken care of these matters, things could get worse. So there is one element of the here and now for people who need to do certain things. So the one action item that you may want to prescribe. Number two, connected, is for you and me, thankfully, touch wood, we could go out and say, do a medical test. Here I am. Here is my blood test, whatever you want. Now give me insurance. Health. There could be, it could be for income replacement for, for us. It could be for whatever, liability coverage. It could be to, for various reasons that we go out and take insurance. So there could be health, there could be life. These are two connected things, because I thought that one is, how do you insure somebody? You have an insurable interest in a child with disability. Can you insure? What is possible, what is not possible? That. And the related aspect that, if you don't write a will, then even if you have insured, suppose there is a payment that is being made, you are insured, there is a payment being made, but you are not in the picture. Then the money goes into some account, some relative, somebody will pop up from somewhere and say, I will take care of it. Go to the court, get some succession letter or whatever. It could happen. So you are leaving a lot of things to chance. So these two are so embedded. What could be the guidance on these 2 points?
Yes, one, life insurance is a very great tool for these families, especially considering, the planning we have done for the family. There is always a shortfall of finance, meeting that financial requirement, because of the kind of expenses they have to incur on special children's, and there is no provision available where they can claim on these expenses. Apart from that, some section 80U or 80D is available, but that is not, to an extent where they have an expense. One, life insurance is very, very important. 3 pillars, I would say, health, life, and disability. Now, health insurance is for you also. For special children, the health insurance was not available till 2019. Okay, there was a change in Mental Health Act where the health insurance was made mandatory. It was mandatory for insurance companies now to cover treatment for mental illness. Again, there was a ruling from IRDA in 2020 October, where they made the rule was that every insurance company has to now cover disabilities also under health insurance. After that, we are seeing insurance companies now covering autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome. So they have started covering these disabilities under health insurance. Otherwise, they were permanently excluded. So then that one good thing which has happened. So health insurance is available for parent also and for the child also now. Life insurance is important because you want to fund that expenses. For you, it may not be feasible because the kind of income you have, the kind of savings you have, and the kind of financial requirement you have. So it may not be feasible. Good thing in life insurance is that for these companies, it is, very important they get a life insurance up till their later years of life. Okay, now you have term insurance available till 80 years or 100 years of age. I think there's the best thing which has happened to these families. They can take a term insurance up to 80 years of age. One, that. Second, create a provision for disability. If you are incapacitated, it's not only about you who is going to make provision for the child, right? You have to plan for that. And the last thing you asked, about where the money will go. Yes, if you do not write a will, the money will go to the child because he might be the only legal heir. But who is going to manage that is a question which, if you do not decide, the court will decide. Until the court will decide who is going to access bank account, who is going to fund the residential care, there is going to be a great question mark on that. It might be for 1 year or 6 months, whatever time, but then you are leaving the child on mercy of somebody else, to take care.
Very insightful, Jitendra. We have also come to the closing, time for the conversation. Unfortunately, I would have loved to, keep asking a lot more questions. But I guess what we have done today is also substantially, a foundation, substantial foundation for a lot of people who have listened to us live, as well as those who would get to see this, because we would have it on YouTube as an available recording. We'll direct them to the conversation, and let us hope that as many, unfortunately, as many students, kids that we get to see around with disabilities, we also make sure that there is a corresponding will that comes out. There is a corresponding legal guardian who is being appointed. These are some of the things that our profession can continuously engage the community to make people aware and keep reminding them. I guess these are things that we have to keep reminding every time you have an opportunity. These have been great lessons today, Jitendra. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rajesh.
I'm sure we will have more conversations.
It's been a great conversation. Yes, it has been a great conversation talking to you and, helping fraternity to know, what, because as I said, just last thing which I say, so when you, look at success, so success is measured by two things. First is the numbers. The numbers is that what is your AUM, what is your profitability. I think there is a long way to catch up, that the way RI, the way we are there. But the second success is that at the end of the day, when you retire, it will be very happy or pleased, that you have served a community and, which you have brought that community to the, world, that yes, there is a community to serve and you are able to serve that community for so many years. That satisfaction itself, is going to be a great success. So
thank you, Jitendra. Very kind of you.
Thank you, Rajesh.
For all of us.